I only take a very limited amount of students each month because I want to connect, and it is crucial for me to get to know each one of them and help them the best way I can. And if you want to know in depth the three pillars that I use so you can speak basic Spanish in 4 weeks, stay here because we'll see it in a bit. But before that, if you just met me, I'm Maria Camila. I was born and raised in Colombia, meaning my native language is Spanish, of course. I grew up in Colombia, and without ever leaving my country, I learned English on my own until I was good enough to be a medical interpreter. So I'm an industrial engineer, and I was working corporate, and then my beautiful princess Sophie was born. I decided I wanted to do something else. So back in 2020, I started to teach Spanish to English speakers. It quickly became an obsession of mine to get them to be able to speak in 4 weeks or less so they could hold a basic conversation and not sound like a robot. So just like you, I wanted to learn another language when I was around 14, and it was my dream to speak English. So picture this. I'm a regular Colombian kid. I was going to school up till I was like 9 or 10. Everything I knew about English was just the verb to be and boring, endless conjugations of it. I copied verbs, I copied greetings, and listened to lame English classes twice a week. And that was it. Does that ring any bells from your high school Spanish classes? Anyways, when I was about 10 or 11, I met a teacher who wanted to teach us how to think in English. So honestly, I thought it was weird, and I was quite resistant at first. I hated it, I couldn't understand anything, and I just wanted to know the meaning before anything else. Then one day, we were completing a random activity. I clearly remember seeing the word house in my mind, followed by images and concepts, and there was no casa anywhere. It was just house. So for the first time ever, I understood what he was talking about. My brain was thinking in English without using my Spanish, and that was like an aha moment for me. He unfortunately left school, but now I had a strategy and I had a way of making my brain think in English. I became obsessed with English. I was fascinated with the fact that I was thinking like in English mode. My pronunciation was great, and I was just following my gut on what to do next. I was watching series, I was reading, I was listening to music, I was printing out the lyrics because I'm not that young. So, yes, I printed the lyrics and I was just practicing on my own. It was lovely, and I was learning on my own, which was great because I was not following any structure or boring exercises or grammar or tenses or anything like that. However, I did feel a little bit alone because I didn't have anyone to practice with. And then friends happened. Oh my God, the slang, the pronunciation, the culture, everything that was happening there, I just loved it. I fell in love with New York. And then boom, the dreaming of living in New York. Because of course I thought I could be a waitress and live in Central Park, which I know, I know, some damage was done, but still, it was the dream. But I loved it so much, I became even more obsessed with it. I would read the labels of shampoo so I knew how to wash my hair in English. Every single thing I could read in English, I would definitely read it in English. And then I switched schools. So I had to take English again as a class. And oh boy, the traditional method was back. I decided to give it a chance because, well, that's how we've learned here in Colombia for years, and I would do anything to live in New York, right? And guess what? It sucked. I learned a rule that sticks with me to this day, and it's that when you use don't, the next verb needs to be in infinitive form. I bet you have never thought about that before. And that meant for me that every single time that I was trying to speak, that I wanted to communicate, I was thinking in tenses and grammar and which was the right form of a verb or whatever, instead of really saying what I wanted to say, what I felt that I wanted to say. Needless to say, it was frustrating. And then one day, my dad, he owns an appliance repair company. So he goes like, hey, I have this client. He's from the United States. So I thought that since you love English so much and you're so good, you could go with me and help me, in the visit. I froze. I panicked. I was thinking about verbs and conjugations and do's and don'ts and whatever. And I couldn't really speak. My dad ended up speaking more than I did. I was ashamed. I felt useless for not being able to hold a basic conversation in this language that I loved so much. And even worse, my New York dream was just stupid at this point. However, I kept seeing myself walking through New York and eating pretzels or pizza or whatever. So I decided to just follow my gut. This beautiful 14-year-old said, you know what? Screw you, books. I'm not going to do it this way. And I just trusted that I was going to learn more my way than their way. And after that, I would just pass my tests by feeling the right answers. And my teachers didn't understand because I didn't know the rules, but yet I was getting the right answer. And I decided back then that traditional systems are wrong and they suck because they teach you stuff that you don't need. They don't follow the natural way of learning. And now I know that if I had stuck with their method, I wouldn't speak this language the way I do. I wouldn't have mastered it and I wouldn't have two brains at this point. And then when I started teaching, I also wanted to learn more about this process. Like I could just do it naturally, but I wanted to know more about it. And that's when I noticed that the traditional teaching language methods or schools or books or whatever, they don't respect the way our brains learn. Our brain does not use logic to speak. It uses emotion. And we create these concepts with repetition and emotion. And grammar as a learning strategy will always make us slow, lower our chances to actually master the language, and cut off all the feeling and the passion that you actually need to speak a language. Also, if you ask me, it's boring. So now, after years of teaching and over 1,000 classes, I noticed my beginner students were always struggling with this every single time. And that's when I decided to create the Spanish Brain method, following these three main pillars that I will tell you in a bit. I gathered everything I did to master English and put it together so my students could get a Spanish brain in a fraction of the time that it took me. So, what is it that we're going to do first? The first thing you need to know is that every single language in the world is learned first by listening. So why would Spanish be any different than that? And you might think, meh, I don't mind having an accent because they can still understand me and it doesn't bother me. Well, imagine that I didn't really care much about English pronunciation, and then I try to say, I sit on the beach, on the sheet, while I focus on the ocean. But then instead of that, I said I sit on the beach on the shit while I focus in the ocean. I think you see my point. But if that wasn't enough, imagine that you try to go into a store and then you want to buy a penne, which is a con. But then you don't care about pronunciation, so you say a penne, which is, I think you see my point, right? So besides the social embarrassment of that, having to constantly borrow sounds from English will make it harder for you to enunciate faster. You will have to repeat yourself a lot and probably be a very slow speaker. On the other hand, when you master phonetics from the start, your pronunciation becomes very clear and understandable. So now you can buy that penny and your listening skills will improve considerably. You'll sing that song you love faster. You will be able to understand the waiter at the Latin restaurant you go. But most importantly, mastering the sounds and being able to understand pretty much everything you hear will boost your confidence through the roof. And in my experience, fluency comes from confidence rather than knowing 3,000 words and 500 structures. Sadly, many people are convinced that they're just not good at languages, when in reality, all they've learned is just how to translate in your head instead of actually diving into the language. And now you're thinking, okay, fine, I'll learn the pronunciation, but how am I going to start talking if I don't know the words? Good news. We're going to learn 20% of the words that are used in roughly 80% of the spoken language using the power of context. So instead of being level 500 in Duolingo and trying to memorize words and not really speaking, will help your brain link words with concepts through stories. And let me show you how you can link 5 new words just now. So let's read this. You're going to read with me. So the little dog who enjoyed pizza. So one day a little dog walked down the street. People called him Henry. Henry wanted some pizza. He smelled pizza from a restaurant. It smelled very good. He wanted to eat the pizza. He knocked on the door and asked the chef. The chef frowned and refused. Very simple story. See it in your head as we're reading, okay? Then I'm going to give you 3 words in español. Perro, calle, oler. Ready? Let's go. The little dog who enjoyed pizza. One day, a little perro walked down la calle. People called him Henry. Henry wanted some pizza. Él olió pizza from a restaurant. Olía, very good. He wanted to eat the pizza. He knocked on the door and asked the chef. The chef frowned and refused. Now we're going to add 2 more. And notice how the words that we learned before are no longer in English. I'll tell you what that does in a second. So we're going to add querer y puerta. Ready? One day, a little perro walked down la calle. People called him Henry. Henry quería some pizza. Él olió pizza from a restaurant. Olía, very good. Él quería to eat the pizza. He knocked on la puerta and asked the chef. The chef frowned and refused. And then notice how your brain is going to link automatically the Spanish and the English words. We already told your brain, hey, dog es perro. You don't need to go through dog. And then we take away the English. You see the magic? Now you know those words, and now you're not learning about conjugation and quería, querer, podía, poder. You're not learning about that. You're just reading the story. And it makes sense for you, and it makes sense for your brain. So your brain is going to go, hey, let's take it in. It's easy. ¿Ves? Do you see? Now you have a Spanish baby brain cell. And you don't lose context as you go. And more importantly, you don't need to memorize words. You just remember the story. Also, this will make you faster and not bookish when you speak. Now, okay, we've got phonetics and we have vocabulary. But this won't be enough to go out and just start randomly speaking, would it? Just like having a driver's license won't make you a great driver. You will probably be slow and you could run someone over. So this is why you need a safe space to practice, to make mistakes, to say funny words when you're speaking, and to be the trampoline for your confidence that will eventually become fluency. You might think, and I've heard this before, well, if I practice here and there and I just talk here and there, I'm practicing my Spanish and I'm improving. Well, wrong. Just think about it. Even if you do have a friend that speaks Spanish, they're not going to correct your mistakes or stop the conversation to give you feedback because at the end of the day, they will understand, they'll figure out what you're trying to say and just move on. And the consequence of this is you will develop bad habits, such as using the wrong verbs, sounded weird when you speak, both because of pronunciation or context. You're going to use English syntaxes all the time. You're going to use the wrong gender, like saying el moto instead of la moto. And worst, you will get stuck in your learning process. However, when you use this new brain of yours in Spanish in these spaces, it will gradually increase the amount of colloquial Spanish and formal Spanish that you're using. All this while speaking properly and getting feedback to improve faster. So as you can see, we can easily create an immersive environment for you to speak, boost your confidence, and keep that energy up on your learning journey. So looking at the big picture here, for you to speak Spanish in 4 weeks, 4 semanas, you will produce sounds almost like a native, then learn words strategically, and finally, use this brand new brain of yours in real conversations. First of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope that I shed some light on your Spanish learning journey. Thank you again for being here. I can't wait to see you in class.